Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a handful of things to take care of today. Some of them, they all should go pretty quickly. We have some new casework families with the hardware position, automatically placing hardware in the right places based off of a requirement stock that Carolyn and Nocti and I think a few other people have been working on. So I'm going to show you all the features of those families and how to use them. This is probably the big one. So as we pass off models to the factory, I have been checking them before releasing them. But I think this is something that the project designers are going to start taking on, basically because you guys know the projects better than anybody else, so you know how to move around them and what things were built how and if there are any exceptions. And basically, all I do when I'm looking through things is making sure that things are built to standards, and so I think it'll be really educational for project designers just as a reminder of putting things on the right phases, putting them on the right work sets, making sure they have penetration objects, all the sorts of things that are in the standards are basically what you need to check. But I'll go over the process for that. Really quick one about rough openings. I think the door and window families had a rough opening offset which was different than what the families were built with. And so we'll go over what those are supposed to be and how to change them in your project. And then if we have time, this is just, it's more of a behind the scenes how I'm updating all of the family elements in the library. And there are a couple of plugins that I'm using, which has been really helpful. And so if we have time at the end and you guys are curious, I can show you that sort of stuff. It'll also be helpful for anybody who's trying to update families as we add more parameters to them, how to go about that and do that as smoothly and as quickly as possible. All right, so here's a couple of cabinets that are placed into a project, and the way that they work is sort of similar to the way that they were before. There's this blue hardware type variable. I've collapsed all of the different types of hardware into a single family called casework hardware. And so all of the knobs, the Hopewell bars, and the Pennington bars are all inside of this. The L-pulls aren't in there because the L-pulls are now obsolete. If we need to put them in for past projects, we can put them in. It might take a little bit of updating to the families to get them to position correctly, but I was told by Laura that those should not be used in any projects going forward, so they are not inside the families and should not be options for a project. So yeah, just place a cabinet, select the cabinet, change your hardware to be whichever type it's supposed to be.
That knob one may not be scheduling correctly.
Is it? Okay.
I think it just might need the parameter callout added to it.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, it decides to freeze. There we go. Okay, so you can see the hardware changed. It's still in the same position. On this option for these lower drawers, you want 2 knobs rather than 1 knob. And so there's a little checkbox over here where it has single pull and double pull. So if you change that to be double pull, now you have 2 knobs on the bottom instead of 1 knob. And then obviously if you change your hardware back to be one of the bars, it still has the 2 knobs checked, so these 2 are overlapping. So just remember, if you change your hardware back, just to uncheck the double pull, and that'll do the single in the center. Same way with the base cabinets. It doesn't have the double pull parameter, but I wanted to show you the difference between the way that the geometry is constrained for this utility cabinet and the way that it's constrained for this base cabinet. With the base cabinet, it's constrained by the top of the element. So you saw with the knobs, those get positioned at the top, and if you change to the bars, they get positioned properly. That's the reason, that constraint right there is the reason why I had to collapse all the hardware into one family versus two different families. If you switch between families, the constraints don't maintain to the planes because it doesn't know, the top plane in one family is the same as the top plane in another family. Whereas if you keep them all in the same family, that plane stays the same, and so the constraint doesn't break. So that's why they're all inside that one family instead of being different families for the hardware. I believe all of the different casework families and all of the types inside of those families have all of this updated, so the hardware should be in the proper place when you place them and set all of these variables. But as with any new family that I make, I probably broke something. So if you place something and it doesn't look right, let me know and I'll go through it and see if one of the constraints broke or what's going on with it. But as far as I know, all of these are up and ready to go, and they're all in Blue Standard. So you guys should be able to use them. All right. Oh, and some of the cabinets in the type catalogs right now do not have BOM object lookup numbers. We are not putting the casework through the BOM because we're doing casework drawings right now. So that's why those are allowed to be in Blue Standard. If they didn't have object lookup numbers, I would have taken them out if we were putting them in the BOM, but since we don't need to put them in the BOM, they're fine without lookups. Any questions about those?
Just to be clear, the LPOL, Laura, and Nakti are working on a substitute for that, right? So that should be hopefully rolled out sometime relatively soon. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, and I didn't delete any of the parameters that were used to control the LPOL, but once we get a replacement for those, we'll have to see, sort of fold those into the where are these things placed and how big are they and all of that sort of stuff. And so these families will have to be modified so that those placement constraints are taken into account, but right now they are not being taken into account. So that will be an update that will have to happen to these families once the new hardware is decided on. All right. Go on to the next one. Let's go to the main event. I don't have it loaded. I load quickly. So I created on the BOM gen board for now, which is where all of the documentation is going, under the documentation tab. I created this card, handoff to factory. And this is a checklist of all of the things that you need to do to get the model ready to hand off. These are the steps that I'm going to be walking you guys through. I have an email in to Daniel at the factory. And I sent him this checklist and said, hey, is there anything that is not on here that should be on here? And I'm waiting to hear back from him. So I'll update this with anything, any of his feedback. But this is what I have been doing up to this point. Whenever we get to the factory handoff point and they're asking us for a model, these are the things that I'm going through and checking. So you guys can sort of go through that and look through that if you don't remember any of these steps or need a refresher or whatever. And actually, you could probably just copy this card into your project Trello board if you have one. I know we do one for the BOM to keep track of the BOM stuff, but you could just copy this over and check each one of these off as you do it, getting ready for releasing to the factory. And then once everything is checked, send an email out to the factory saying, all right, go get it, you guys. All right, so I wasted enough time, so now it's open. So basically, my process for checking a model is pretty simple. I get rid of anything in the file that isn't being used by using the purge unused command. And then I just go through all of the different family categories and check to make sure that they're complete and accurate. And so it's sort of a repetitive system. I'm not going to go through the whole check process. The whole check process usually takes me a couple of hours to do, not longer than that. And for you guys, it might actually be even faster because you're already familiar with the project and how you built everything. And yeah, so first thing, purge unused. And for some reason, I don't know why it works like this. It has something to do with nested families. But if you purge unused once, it doesn't get rid of everything. You have to actually do it 2 or 3 times to do it. But you just say purge unused, hit OK. So yeah, you'll see right now I have 163 items that aren't being used. So just say OK. It's going through, getting rid of all of those items. So I haven't synced this up, so it looks like some of these things have been changed. I'm not going to sync it up right now just because it would take some time. But I went through this with Sarah the other day, so I think a lot of the stuff has already been cleaned up by her since I last synced this. But yeah, so purge unused 3 times. Next thing I do is sort of clean up my view, basically hide everything that I don't care about. Section box. Yeah. All right, I think it might keep giving me errors. If it gives me too many errors, then I have to wait a second and actually just relink it. The other thing to check for, make sure that things are on the right work sets and they're on the right phases. The way you can do that is just doing your view filtering like you're used to doing. I don't even have my filters set up. But I can turn off my work set, so I don't want to see anything which is site built. So I turn that off. I think I already manually turned that off. All right, I think I need to reload this so it'll let me work on this. Hopefully it won't take too long. Do you guys have any questions yet while we're waiting for this to reload? Or any general questions about factory handoff? All right. We just had dead air then. Okay. so now let's go through this. We'll turn off site build work set. Again, I would go through and sort of do the opposite first, where you hide the factory build and show the site build, just to make sure that you don't have anything on a wrong work set. So it looks like foundation, lower level, decks, connector, roof. So it looks like everything that's on the site build work set is supposed to be on the site build work set, and none of the mod stuff is on there, which doesn't surprise me because Sarah already went through and did a lot of cleanup on this one, or not a lot of cleanup, but any cleanup that was necessary. So if anything is on the wrong work set, you just select it and change its work set over here. So if we're on the wrong work set, just change it right there. All right, there we go. So it looks like we've got a couple of things. Yeah, so those are on the factory built work set. They probably shouldn't be, so I'm going to move those over to site built. I think those are structural and linked to something else, which is structural. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, so now I have all my factory built stuff as the only thing that's showing. And then the next thing I do is go through and make sure that everything is on the right phase. So if you change your phase filter to show new, that will only show you the things which are on the phase which is selected for the view. So you saw that the garage went away. That's good because it's on a separate mod and therefore a separate phase. And yeah, so this one only has 2 mods and 2 phases, and it looks like everything's on the right phase. Excellent. Let's go back. I'm just going to turn this off.
Luke?
Yeah? Yes?
When you use the phase filtering earlier on,
yeah,
shut off all the site built stuff. Well, what if some of that stuff that was on site built was on the wrong phase? So shouldn't you have cycled through once without the phase filtering on so you could see everything? Then go back in and check out separately?
Yes, you are correct. So I had my phase filter still set to show new when I did my work set filtering. Yeah, you're right.
Yes,
Jeff. Yeah, so I should have no phase filter. And then like that. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that way you can see if anything's wrong on the wrong, because there's 3 outlets that are on the wrong thing right there, but Sarah's going to catch those later on.
Yeah, these right here. Yeah, that's a good point. You should, have your phase filter set to none before you do the cycle through. That's a good point. You're correct. Yeah, so I wasn't sure if those are part of the mod or part of the site build. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you as a project designer, you know where those live in terms of whether they're part of the mod or whether they're part of the site build connector. So you'll know better than I will whether those are on the right phase or not. So, all right, everything's on the right phase. Everything's on the right work set. Now the majority of the work. It's sort of going through, isolating things, checking them, and then sort of checking them off. Usually I start with the system families first, so walls, roofs, floors, and then here's a little tool that is incredibly useful not only for this process, but for absolutely everything that you want to do. Like sometimes the hardest thing in Revit is looking at the element that you want to look at and hiding everything else. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with the little glasses icon down here. This is your temporary hide and isolate. So what I'll do is I'll select a wall and say isolate category. And what that does is only shows the walls in the project. And you can see you get this nice cyan border around the outside, so you know what's being, you know that something is being isolated. So this is now all my walls for the project. If you select one, and then you select all instances in the project, that selects all walls of that type. So you can see this is the exterior blue Mooney Hardy siding family. It has all of the instances of that family type selected. Go in here, make sure that this is dimensionally accurate, that you're using the right wall section for all of this. And then after you've checked it, say hide in view element. You can't do hide in view category, because if you do hide in view category, it's going to hide all of your walls. You only want to hide it by element. But because I did a select all instances, it has every instance of that particular wall type selected. So it's basically the equivalent of hiding that wall type if you do that process. So select a wall, select all instances, and then hide by element will hide all the walls of that wall type. So yeah, you basically just go through all of the elements. And actually, because you do this so many times, I've mapped shortcut keys for all of this sort of stuff. So I think I have SA as select all, so I don't have to go through all of the drop-downs. So yeah, again, just making sure your wall types are correct. And then, yeah, just have references of what these things are supposed to be. I've tried getting the people who know best to look over the wall types, and everybody's really busy, and so I haven't gotten a clear answer of yes, these are our official wall types, and this is what they should all look like. And so I'm going off of past projects and what you guys have in there, and what I know to be standard. But again, this isn't as cleaned up as it should be. We should have some sort of list to say, yes, this is what a wall section should look like, but we don't have that yet. That would make this checking a lot easier and more accurate. And then, so after you've gone through all of the different wall types, let's say I've checked everything. Now in this view, I'm still in an isolated view. So since I turned on my isolate, it said, I want to see only walls. And inside of the walls, I've gone through and selected everything individually and hidden it by element. So now nothing else shows up. If I say reset, it brings me back out to the main project. But since I hid those objects by element, they don't show up. You can get them back by going into the light bulb, which is your hidden elements, and you can see all of the walls are pink, which means that they are hidden. And again, since you hid them by element and not by category, it won't let you unhide by category. You have to actually just do a big crossing select, filter it down to all of the walls, say OK, and now you can unhide by element, and now your walls are back in the main project. I'm just going to hide them by category because I know I already went through those. So that's basically the process for system families. Select each type, select everything of that type, check the definition, make sure the definition is accurate, and then hide it. And so as you go through that, you'll whittle down what shows up in your model. And basically, when nothing shows up in your model anymore, you're done. I'm just going to go through the system families real quick because all of those are done the same way as the as the walls that I just showed you. And ceiling. All right, so now you get to your component families. It works in a similar way. There's a couple of different things that you look for. But if I select a piece of casework and I say isolate that casework, isolates generic models. Why does that? I don't know why it lumps your generic models and your casework together, but I'm just going to select all my casework. And now instead of isolating by category, I'm going to isolate elements. Basically works in a similar way as isolate category. It's just a couple more steps. But yeah, I don't know why it works like that with casework and generic models. But all your component families, the things that you need to look for and make sure that they are there. Make sure that everything that needs either that needs one of these penetration objects, either to add blocking to the walls or as a keep-away zone for the studs, make sure that that's in there, because that's what the factory uses when they're doing their shop drawings to say, oh, I need blocking in this area so that this cabinet has something to attach to. And I'm pretty sure they do it behind all of the casework, even the stuff that's on the floor. Like this, may not need blocking behind it, but we want the factory to know where it is so that they can make that determination rather than us. And then the rest of everything else, I do not know what those are. Executive cabinetry panels. Okay. There might be, so depending on where this goes, it might need some blocking behind it, or it might be standalone. This looks like some sort of customization. But again, you project designers are going to know exactly what the intention is for all of these pieces, so you'll know whether they need those objects or not. And then again, after you've gone through everything, make sure that it's all right. Hide and view elements. Come back out to the main model.
Hey, Liz, I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, this is Maya from Ann Arbor. What are we supposed to be doing about the analytical columns that are being used? Like, how do you, like, if you make something that's analytical, you can't really change the work set or the phase once you've already, like, made it? Or is there a way that we're working around that to get that on the right phase and work set?
Well, there's analytical objects are not physical. Like there's physical objects which are sort of aligned or snapped to those analytical objects. So you should be able to look at the physical object without needing to modify the analytical object. But I know sometimes the analytical object links to a phase, and then anything that is linked to that analytical object automatically gets placed on that phase. But you're telling me that you can't change the phase after you've created it?
Not easily. I've tried like certain columns and floors, like unchecking if there's like a physical, not analytical part, you uncheck like analytical, then you can sometimes change it, but sometimes not, depending on how it's made. And I think there's a difference between using a column that can be analytical or an analytical column. I think there's a distinction. So I was wondering, like, does a factory need analytical, or can we just change them back to regular columns?
We're not using analytical for anything, is my understanding. That's when you're doing like structural analysis on a project. It's like the centerline model that they're using. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we need the analytical capabilities of anything. I think it is automatically created for certain objects, like columns. But yeah, either change the analytical object and its phase, and the physical object should update, or if you just want to totally not have an analytical element at all, that's fine too, and then the physical object should act just like any other physical object in terms of phasing.
Okay. Yeah, personally, I think that analytical objects should not be used as like the default if possible, just because they become trickier later on.
So what's the difference? Is this the difference? Like using a structural column makes it analytical and using an architectural column doesn't?
That could be it. I don't know. I haven't really. It's kind of one of those weird things that like sometimes like I've seen it. And I've only seen it in projects that I've inherited, not that I've created. So I don't know how people are making them because I'm not there.
Right. Yeah, I would think, well, first of all, I think analytical objects are probably more likely to be on site-built portions, like if you have a column in your lower level. I don't think we use them too often to do the mod design. So for this, because it's the factory handoff, it shouldn't really matter, but you still should be able to schedule those and put them on the right phases and all of that sort of stuff. So I think I understand how they work in terms of changing the analytical object and everything else updating to match. But maybe you and I can talk after this and you can show me exactly how it's not working and we can figure out why and what to do about it.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. All right. So I know in a lot of these models, or all of these models, we're still using old exported CATIA steel as the reference. The one thing to check, and I know you do this while you're designing, just make sure that all of your walls align with the steel in the appropriate way, so that when they dimension all of the panels for the framing, they're the right size to fit within the steel and around the steel. And usually do that in floor plan view rather than in 3D view. But that's the only thing that you need to do with the existing steel. The rest of everything else, I mean, I think you go through the same process as I did with the casework. Isolate it by category, using your little sunglasses. Check to make sure that everything has the penetrations where it's supposed to have the penetrations. Make sure that those penetrations are on the right layer. I'm not sure if this is. Go through, select, and hide everything. Go back out into your main model. All right, let me see what else is on my list that I'm forgetting. Phasing, work sets. This should be system family definitions. Oh yeah, there's been a couple of projects where we, going forward, everybody knows that we're supposed to place everything as model elements and not draft things in views because of a lot of different reasons. I have checked a couple of projects where we didn't have the right, plumbing valve trim or something, and so somebody just drafted it in the interior elevation or as 3D lines. You'll be able to see 3D lines as they show up in the model lines because they show up in 3D views, but if you do annotation lines inside of a view, they will not show up. Inside of this view, you'll have to go to the interior elevations in order to see those. And again, because you guys are working on these, and I'm not, if something has been drafted or not, and please don't do that. That's one that's hard to catch. So the sort of quick check that I do to make sure nothing like that happens is when I have my plumbing fixtures and I isolate my category. You can sort of see where the bathrooms are. Just go into the bathrooms and make sure nothing is obviously missing. If you have a tub and you don't have a spout or valve trim, it means something is wrong. Again, here we've got a shower drain, and we have all of the necessary stuff. So this is a really easy way to tell if something is missing, or a relatively easy way to tell if something is missing. Just, does the bathroom suite of elements have all of the things that it's supposed to have? But yeah, that one was a tricky one that I almost missed. Let's see what else. Elements. All right, so that's basically all I'm checking. Like I said, it's not rocket science. It's just making sure all of the information that we need to communicate to the factory in terms of where they need to put blocking, where they need to stay away from, the dimensions of everything is accurate, and all of the wall types are accurate. And it doesn't actually even matter for the factory handoff whether all of the layers inside of the family is accurate, as long as the alignment and overall dimension of those walls is accurate. But the easiest way to tell whether the dimensions are accurate is if all of the layers are accurate and meet our wall section standards. So after you've gone through, checked all of that stuff, you have a project in which nothing is showing up in. Email me if this is the first time that you're handing it off to the factory. I will make a folder on the Revit server, and I'm gonna show you guys a little behind the curtain right now for how that happens. So this is how I access the Revit server and how I move models and make things and copy things over. There's this factory handoff directory. I need to go in here and make the directory before you can move anything into it. So for the first time, just email me. I'll make a directory in here. And then after I've made it, then you can save the model in there. And here's the naming standard for it. Use client name and then use the handoff date, because as we get multiple ones of these, if something gets updated, we need to know what we handed off when, so that if something goes wrong, we can track it, and the factory knows which one to use. And they're actually not working inside these files. What they're doing is they're linking them into a shop drawing template file that they've created. So if we update a model, it's not like they need to start all of their drawings over. They just link in the new model. We tell them what's changed, and so any of the drawings that they've already created, they just have a heads up to go and change that in their shop drawing template. And I think this system works out pretty well for both us and them. We can issue new models basically whenever we want and whenever something has changed, and then they can just input that in stride and not have to restart any work. So it seems to be working out pretty well, and just so you guys know, that's how they're using them. And then they have specific view filters set up so that everything is hidden except those penetration objects which we create. So that's the only thing that they look at when they're doing their shop drawing. Save a copy of that model to that factory handoff directory, and also save an archive version to the project directory on the S drive. And this is where I've been saving them. I think this is where it makes the most sense to save them. Clients, record set, shop, archive, and then the name of the file. I think someone else had saved them in a different location.
I think sometimes, because if we're archiving at every phase, if we're archiving, I think there's also a Revit folder too on some of the newer projects that we had before when we were, so like in the drawings, there's Revit folder also, so I think it'd be good to be clear on which one to put it in.
Okay, I mean I think this makes sense. Like it's well, it's not really a shop drawing. It's not a record set of shop drawings. It's a record set of the model that we hand off to the shop. So I think that might be a little bit confusing or not intuitive for people to find. But yeah, we should decide as a group where all of these things are getting saved. But this is where I've been saving them up until this point. So
I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, Luke, because to me what I've been doing with 08 drawings is that's the archive that, sorry, I'm not sure who was speaking, but that we were referring to just a minute ago, whereas record sets are like the kind of document that's actually pushing forward and being submitted. So I think
and that's sort of how I think
sense.
of them. I think of record set as something which is, this is, you're not working in this file anymore. This file is not being changed. It It's an archive. Like, I guess I think of record set as sort of an archive folder, and I think of this as an archive model. So anyways, yeah, this is where, let's just save them here right now, and if we decide we want to save them somewhere else, I'll update this with that new location and I'll let you guys know. So yeah, save one there, save one there. One of the things that you have to be careful of when you're saving these is make sure that you detach your model from central before you save it. If you forget to do this, the model that you save stays linked to your main central model. So instead of this being an archive which doesn't change, it will continually change with your central model. So this step, really, really important. I think I'm going to bold it if I can figure out how to bold it. So yeah, just make sure you do that. And then the last step is email the project drawing email list. I think there's a shortcut in everybody's Outlook, and I don't even know who it goes to. It goes to Albert and Daniel and probably procurement and a bunch of other people. But that's the official, hey, factory, we did something, here you go. So if it's the first time that you're sending them the model, just say, hey, posted the model here, go get it. If it's an update, you've already posted a first one and you're posting a second one, say, hey, I posted a new model here. These are the things that have changed about it. Look out for that, and that just tells the shop drawing team what drawings they'll probably have to modify because of any changes between version 1 and version 2.
I think that's also listed on Josh's guidelines also.
Oh, is it? Yeah, I think some of that is duplicated from Josh's guidelines. So yeah, that's about it. The one other thing, actually, I'm going to talk about rough openings real quick, just because of the conversation I had with Daniel, and this would be a good point to update it. I'll send this out to everybody. I forget exactly how it was defined inside the families. I think it was like a ½ inch. I know this is really small on the screen, but it says 1/4 inch left and right, 1/4 inch top and bottom. I think this was previously 1/4 inch top and bottom and ½ inch left and right. So what Daniel has been doing is modifying that inside the files after we give it to him, I believe. But going forward as a standard, if we could just update this so that he doesn't have to do that when we send it to him, that would be great. And then, yeah, for doors, it's ½ inch to each side and ½ inch on top. So I'll send this out to everybody. And then these are the Mooney wall changes. I know Kevin Dang has spent a lot of time going through projects and identifying where this doesn't work. But I'm just going to send this out in the email so that everybody knows what we're eventually striving for. And everybody is aware of all of the issues with meeting this standard for right now.
Hey, Luke, last time I talked to Nakti about the 4½ inch offset, it seems like that might have been a misunderstanding, actually, because I was talking to her about in the balance how we'd have to change a lot of our standard windows out and or, mull a couple of things together, and she was very specific about not doing that and showed me a couple of email chains that was saying something slightly different. So I'm not sure that that's an official change.
I think those are ideal dimensions that they would like to have,
Right.
but aren't necessarily what they absolutely like is possible.
Yeah, I've been sort of on the periphery of this one. I remember we got the okay from Greg to not have those dimensions on a project or two, but I thought that was that we were trying to resolve the issues with our products where we don't have that clearance. But yeah, that's, I don't know if there's any resolution to this yet in terms of how we're taking care of it. You, Andrew, and Nakti might be right, and if things have changed, let me know.
I guess Kevin's not on the call.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll track these down. Yeah, I mean, I think in order to obey this, it would be a big change to a lot of our products in terms of which windows and doors and all of that sort of stuff we use. So yeah, don't mangle your project to try to meet this sort of stuff. yeah, we should get clarification as to whether we need to do this or what the dimensions are, or like, I think there's a lot of question marks about this stuff right now.
But you're going to fix all the window rough openings, right? They're still supposed to be a half on the left and right, you know, top and bottom.
This is what Daniel told me. He told me it was quarter.
When?
2 weeks ago.
I think it may have changed because when they changed from doing NewCon was what was causing them to need more space.
Oh, so this was a change.
I don't know. I mean,
yeah, but part of the problem too was the bucks that they were putting in. Then they weren't going to do bucks, and now they're doing bucks again. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Well, all right. So I guess we need clarification on all of this. Just forget that I said anything. Yeah, I mean, who do we need to talk to get a definite answer on this, Jeff?
Well, I've been talking to Tom Lee, but obviously that's the wrong one. Right?
Well, I don't know. That might be the right one.
It's been a half and a half, you know?
Okay.
And can we just send an email to Danielle and Ben, who I guess is actually working on the jobs, and have them tell us what the rough opening is supposed to be? Because I know the stuff we've been giving him as models has been all over the place. If you open it, if you look at what the windows say.
Right, and I know we give.
I don't really care, but they definitely said they needed more. They wanted a half-inch all the way around, and they could have been changing their mind left and right, and that's fine. But they shouldn't be doing that. If they change their mind after some point, they get to change their own models. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be going in and changing the thing left and right just because this week they want to scosh it out a little more.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe we, you know, if we can set it once in ours and it's what they want, then I'm fine setting it once. But yeah, I think this is, I mean, it seems like it's a shop drawing issue, so maybe we just send them whatever we want to send them, and then they update it to be what they want until they get a standard, and then if they get a standard, we can implement it. But yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be jumping through hoops if they're going to change their mind every week or two.
Daniel also told me, like maybe within the last week, that he was using the sizes on the window and door schedule. So it's like what the project designer selects might be what's driving him to change. Because that's why, because some people have been changing it in the window and door schedule and some people haven't. So then he might just be adjusting it based, because he told me he uses the sizes that we give him on the drawing, on that sheet.
Really?
So that might be driving the size.
Okay. I mean, I think that we should be, I think that they should be deciding what they want for a rough opening. And if they have a standard and they can communicate that to us clearly, then they should do that and we can implement it. But, I mean, this stuff, I mean, I think now that we're using automated schedules for all of our stuff, you don't input the rough opening, you input the unit width, and you set the rough opening offset parameters. And so I think it's going to standardize things more because you have to do it that way rather than just saying this window has this rough opening and this window has this rough opening specific to the window. Like, it will be set up according to a rule of offsets. We just need to know what those rules are. And I think it should come from the factory, but if the factory is using what we give them because we have historically given it to them, then if we want to incorporate those rules, then let's incorporate those rules. But yeah, this was what I got from him 2 weeks ago, so I thought this was okay to release to you guys, but it sounds like all of this is still up in the air. So I will try to track this down. I'll send out a couple of emails and try to nail this down so I can let you guys know. All right, anything else? I think I've covered everything I want to. I'm not going to get into my fancy parameter manipulation. I think that'll have to wait till next week. So, yep, go ahead.
This is Brandon in Ann Arbor. This may be a conversation with you afterwards. I've been having trouble with my window schedule and a couple of parameters not pulling in correctly. Specifically the blue model, where it actually pulls in like the window model number. It's working for some of the families, but then not for the two mauled vertical ones. For some reason, it's not pulling in that blue model number.
Okay. Do you know? Yeah, we might have to take a little bit of a closer look afterwards. But do you know offhand whether that parameter exists within the family?
Luke,
because I know
it's Andrew. We took a look. Yeah, we took a look inside, and it looked like there was potentially something hidden in that particular family, or some way that Carl Lorenz was working on it that's slightly different than the other families. So I think maybe we should just look at it afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. Mike. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, it's Maya. I've encountered this before, that sometimes I've noticed it in the lightings with voltage in light families, but if you create a parameter that isn't exactly the same as a shared parameter, even if you just like make a new one in the family that's named exactly the same, it won't link properly, and that is what I've encountered. So what you can do is in the family, you completely remove that parameter and then like reload it. Then you have to like reload it back in your model and then go back into the family and load the shared parameter, put in the value, load it back into the Revit model, and then it'll schedule properly. It's a bit of a rough workaround, but you essentially have to like purge it and then reinsert that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we want to be doing that for the windows.
No, we don't. We have to find another way.
Yeah. So the fancy parameter trick that I ran out of time, so I can't show you, it will take care of a lot of these issues in terms of parameters not being a part of families because they're older families and we weren't using those parameters when they were made, or whatever. But for anybody who is having these problems, I can show you tricks to update them more quickly, or for the blue standard stuff, I'm going to be going through and adding all of the standard parameters to those families from the shared parameter file and overriding any family parameters that were created with the same name. So hopefully that'll clear it up. And maybe I can show you guys how I did that / do that next week. But Brandon, I'll give you a call after this meeting and we can look at that stuff and see if that's actually the issue.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, guys. So I know you guys have been trying to be quiet in Ann Arbor, and I know in general that project designers are being asked to do a lot more in terms of getting projects ready to release to factory, and our scope seems to be sort of expanding in a lot of ways to fill out more forms and check more things. And in showing you guys how to get a model ready for the factory, I'm not trying to do less work, although I'm sort of trying to do less work. But do you think that it's reasonable for you guys to be doing these sorts of checks? Like, does it make sense to have a project designer do it? Should we check each other's work rather than checking your own model? I mean, I can keep checking them.
If we're checking each other, because there's a point where you've been working on a model and rushing to get it out by the deadline, and you need that extra set of eyes on it. Maybe it works better if we get a partner so that we can like explain to them what we were working through, and then we have both of us kind of counteractively working towards checking it, something like that.
I agree with that. I think we can check them, but I don't think we should be checking our own.
I mean, my reasoning behind having the project designer do it is that you know how things were built better than anybody else. Like, when I come into these things fresh, I have a hard time figuring out how things are supposed to be other than just the general, are things on the right work set, are they on the right phase? And so that's why I thought it would make sense for the project designer to do it. But if you guys think that
Well, I
having
agree with
somebody
that
else,
too.
whether
I
it's me
think
or another project designer, check it.
no, I think it does make sense to have the project designer on it, but it also makes sense to have a fresh set of eyes, which is why maybe the project designer works with one other person and they kind of go through it together so they can sort of figure out exactly what isn't there and what is, I don't know, or what's right and what's not.
Okay.
Maybe the checker, like the rule for whoever's checking it, would be in the same office as the person who originally did it, so that you can work through when you have questions. Sometimes between offices it gets hard to explain things.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind continuing to do it, but I think, yeah, having somebody else in the same office, may be beneficial. I mean, and if I have to keep checking the models before we officially release them to the factory, that's totally fine too. I just want you guys to know what I'm looking at, so that maybe the project designer takes the first pass through it, checks everything looks good according to them, then either me or some other third-party checker looks over it again as a second set of eyes.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense, because then it's almost the exact same process of creating a family in the end process versus putting it to standard, right? Like that we're trying to make sure that everything is properly placed and properly labeled, but inevitably, each of us knows how to do different things, and we're going to miss certain things. So, you who kind of understand how all these things work at the final check makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I hate being the gatekeeper. Like, I hate being the guy that gives the official okay, but I also understand that for these sorts of things, both family creation and modeling standards, that it makes sense for me to be the official gatekeeper. But at the same time, the more you guys do it, the more I trust you to do it, and the more you guys know how to do it. So even if it's just, hey guys, this is what I'm going to be checking for, give it a first pass before you pass it off to me, and fix anything that you see, I think that will help you guys know what the standards are and model to the standards, and it'll help me because I'll have to give you fewer comments after I check through the model and say, oh, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed. So
yeah,
let's do that for now. Yeah, let's do that for now. Let's say before you get ready for handoff, run through this checklist and do everything on it, and then let me know it's okay, and I'll still be the final thumbs up before the release to the factory.
Cool.
Luke, is there anyone we can start working with who can be the final say, so that you don't have to go through this every time? I mean, I know you'll do it. You'll do it for now until we all get better at it. But I mean, as we we're obviously hiring more people. So as we grow, we're gonna need. You can do everything. I know you want to, but is there anyone that we can look to maybe take on a role like that, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's
maybe that'll just come to light as we work on it.
Office, yeah, who is the deputy in each office who looks over things before they get released, or I don't know. I'm open to any of that, and I think the more you guys work in the software, the more comfortable you get, and so there may be a point at which all the project designers know all of the standards and build to them, and there's never anything for me to check. If I check 10 models in a row and everything's perfect, I'm probably not going to keep doing it, after I have faith in you guys to do it, and then just pick up any comments from the factory. But I think between now and then, having you guys check it, having me check it, I think, between us, we'll pick it up, anything that needs to get picked up before the factory, and then, yeah, maybe after a project designer has done it 3 or 4 times, then they are officially licensed to release things to the factory and know everything to look for. So,
okay.
Yeah, let's do that for now. You check it, and I check it and release it, and then maybe another month or 2, we'll see how things are and if we need to keep going through this checklist.
Okay.
All right.
I have one more quick question about the Revit Assets Trello board. I noticed a couple, in the casework column, there were a couple of old ones that were asking for bombable info for the cabinet. Is that okay to just consider that an obsolete comment at this point, since we don't bomb casework? Or
yeah, and if anybody, we can definitely get rid of those.
I moved it to needs clarification just in case, but
okay. That's great. I'll take care of those. As a final note, if anybody has cards up here which no longer apply, or they need attention from me, please go into them and write me a note or delete them or do whatever is appropriate. I have gone through and moved everything that I know to move from in process to Blue Standard and checked everything. So if something is still in the in process folder and is yours and it needs attention or needs to get moved to Blue Standard, please let me know, because there's a lot of stuff in there that may or may not be useful anymore, and I've moved over everything that I can to Blue Standard and cleaned up the Revit inventory. So if you guys could just give me a hand with any last-minute stuff of, adding cards, deleting cards, sending me emails about families. Like if you still need stuff that hasn't been taken care of, bring it to my attention again, and I will work through those as quickly as possible. But I feel like we are getting really, really close to having Blue Standard really well defined and filled out. I feel like we're in a really good state and can sort of move on to the next stage of things. All right?
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Again, send me any Revit questions or issues. Brandon, I'll follow up with you here probably after I go grab some lunch. That's it. Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.